Agenda, motion. Gordon and Callahan, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. Councillor Slade?
It's not a pecuniary interest, but it is a conflict of interest for 7.1, the request from the William Hickman, as I'm a member of that group.
Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. Is there any points that anybody would want separated out?
I move approval of the agenda.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Ritzman-Taninga. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Business. Five. Okay. 5.1. Okay. Any questions?
So that's a presentation by Paul Seabuck, our auditor.
Okay.
So Paul could come in and take the podium. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think you all know once a year I come and I present the consolidated statements, and as your auditor, I'm also here available for questions. When I look at the information, there's just a few things I'd like to, to highlight, maybe get through. We ended up with a little bit of a larger surplus than you planned. Last year, you spent about $500,000 on capital. You budgeted to spend $900,000, $951, and there were some streets you didn't do and some projects, and some were started and weren't finished. So that impacts things. The biggest place that impacts you is you'll notice when we look at the balance sheet, your bank account is higher. So you didn't spend all your capital. That's one reason. Another place it impacts, a lot of that money you didn't spend and some of the surplus in the departments were transferred to reserve. So during the year, your reserves increased 1.7 million. So at the end of the year, you'll see that your reserves are $9.7 million. Like I said, about 600 of that is just money that wasn't spent on capital or your various departments that was surpluses that were transferred over. So that's a good thing that you recognize that. And there's another item that doesn't show up in reserve. It's called the deferred revenue, just the nature of accounting, are the gas taxes. You get federal gas tax. You didn't use all your federal gas tax in 2015. So at the end of the year, there was 350,000 of that. So, and that increases your bank account too. One thing I always try to point out, I'm not sure you always see it on most of the information you receive is, budgets and all this, but we do present a balance sheet and it does show your debt. Your debt at the end of the year was $2.2 million. You didn't take on any new debt, but you paid down through the various payments, $160,000. So the fact you can do capital and not take on debt is a good sign. When we do look at the financial statement, you'll see the way we calculate it, a surplus of 700,000, but you transferred all that into reserve. So at the very end, you have a tax stabilization account and you transfer $1,700 into that. As far as the audit itself, it's in two parts. We do an interim audit in the fall. We come here for 3 days or so. And then we come for a week, usually end of February and March. We come for a week. There's 4 or 5 of us. We try to hit all the various departments. So at the end of the audit, we didn't find any unusual items that we would bring to council. We didn't find anything that we looked into further that we would report to you. There were really, at the end of the audit, there was no difficulties. Anything we asked for was provided for, so that's all good and appreciated. Just going through the numbers quickly. The statement of financial position, that's your balance sheet as of December 31st, where you stood. So the one item I pointed out with your cash. You'll see last year was 8.3 million, now it's 10.3. When you look at your bank accounts, it's evenly spread. You've got $5 million in general, and in water and sewer, you have about $5 million. They both went up about $1 million, so that's a good thing. Some of it's planned reserves for the water and sewer. Your taxes are down a bit. You do a good job of collecting your taxes. You collected, for the 2015 taxes, you collected about 94.5% of what was outstanding. So that's good. You also have receivables. That's your water and sewer billings, HST, things of that nature, so that's the same. Long-term receivables, those are tile drain loans. They show up as an asset and a liability. That's the way it is. And the long-term investment, that's been there for a long time, since 2000. That's your investment in West Ontario, and part of that, the note, 400,000, and the rest, 1.2 million, are common shares. And that's a cost. We don't value that at fair market value. That's just what your share was when that happened, and it's a hard thing to value, so we don't. So your total assets are 13 million, up quite a bit from the year before, 11 million. Things that are outstanding are your accounts payable, nothing really unusual in there. There's wage accruals or some contractors holdbacks, etc. One item that always shows up, landfill closure costs, 300,000, and went up a wee bit. Your municipality is responsible for 3 landfill sites, the Wingham, East Walwinosh, and 35% of the Blythe-Hullet landfill site. And you hire an engineer, and they basically look at how many years the dump will be open, landfill site, how many years it'll be closed, and how long you have to monitor it. And there's a whole bunch of your landfill sites, other than the Blythe-Hullet, have a long lifespan ahead. And that's a guess too, because with recycling and so forth, it's hard to estimate how long your landfill site will last. So they're saying, how much money would you need today to finance closing your landfill sites? And their number is $323,000. You have $140,000 in reserves, but it's a hard thing to estimate because it's so far in the future. And then your municipal debt, we talked about that. That's your, we'll see a schedule later that shows the 5 outstanding loans. So the difference between your assets and liabilities is your net financial assets, 9.8 million. And in your case, that pretty well mirrors your reserves. You have 9.7 in reserves, and that's that number. That's how your reserves are financed through basically your bank account less any liabilities. As far as your capital, even though you added 500,000 to it, you depreciated 1.6, so it fell from 50 million to 48 million. The next page is a consolidated statement of operations, and you're used to seeing more detail, but we group everything together. So you have your taxation, $4.5 million, very close to what was budgeted. User fees, that's your arena items, water, sewer, landfill site, daycare, all those items, 4.2 million, very close to what was budgeted. Government transfers, the largest one is the partnership fund received from the province. That's 1.3 out of the 2 million. Other municipal transfers, investment income, that's higher because obviously your bank was higher. Penalties and interest on taxes. And then the one item that looks a little strange is the negative 31,000. That's a loss on an old truck you had and you sold it. Actually sold for less than book value. So that's more or less a paper entry. So your total revenue is $12 million, a little higher than what was budgeted. Then looking at the various expenses, there's nothing too out of the line. They're all pretty close to budget. Planning and development is lower. You budgeted 61, you only spent 20. A lot of that you planned to do some engineering, which you put in this year's budget, but that's why that's 19. So the difference between the income and expenses is the $700,000. Now that's $700,000. That includes depreciation 1.7, but it doesn't include what you spent on capital. So that 700, you have to still pay for your capital plus your transfer to reserves and principal payments. But it's good to have a surplus of that size and the fact you set it aside in reserves. The next page tries to the statement of change in financial assets. It takes the surplus, adds back depreciation, which is a non-cash item, subtracts the capital, which is a cash item, and it comes to $1.8 million. And that's basically pretty well the same as to what you transferred to reserves plus what you paid on long-term debt payments. That's how you were able to finance your debt payments plus transfer funds to reserves. And then the next statement is statement of cash flow. That reconciles your bank. Last year, your bank was 8.3 million, and now it's 10.3. And it shows that 700,000 came from operations. You add back depreciation, you budget for that, but it's a non-cash item. And then the things that come off that are the capital, the 500,000, and your debt payments, principal repayments of 163,000. And that's how you ended up with more money in the bank. And then we have notes, just going over the ones that might be relevant. There is a note number 5 on your investment in West Ontario. The numbers don't change, so it's the same note as before. It shows your percentage of ownership in it. The money you contribute to OMERS is 333,000, very close to last year. There's a long wordy note on the landfill closure site. I think the main thing is that your landfill sites seem to have a long life, and so it's down in the future. And you have set aside 142,000. Then note number 8 states your municipal debt. I should note there are some typos there. Under the first 2, it says you have monthly blended payments of 49,000. That's not true. You don't pay 49,000 a month. You pay that twice a year. And same with the second one, so we'll change that. The other 2 are accurate. So you do have those 4 loans. The first one we used when you realigned the fire departments and you bought a refrigerator, that's 823,000. The 174 is for, you did some 2009 road projects. $1 million is the ESTC Center. And then the 180,000 is when you received a RIG grant and you had to match that and you borrowed some money there to upgrade to the community center. So your total loans are 2.2 million, and last year they're 2.3, so you went down 160,000. There was a note number 12. It talks about your accumulated surplus. 691,000 is your general. 46 million is tied up in capital assets, the investment in West Ontario, and the reserves of 9.7 million. Then there are some schedules. There's 2 schedules: tangible capital assets. It just shows where the 500,000 went. Some under protection is the police and the ESTC. Transportation, roads and vehicles, etc. Environmental upgrades for sewer. Health is actually the cemetery. You bought a mower there. Social and family or daycare. You did some flooring there. And recreation and culture is basically the arena. Then you have work in progress. Those are projects that weren't completed at the end of the year, but eventually there will be. Some of those are wells. Some of those roof repair at the complex. And then there is a statement on the reserves and reserve funds, and it shows that you have you started with $8 million in reserves, ended up with 9.7. You can see where that money was transferred. Of that, there's 5.5 million for water and sewer. Reserve funds are where there's actual separate bank accounts of $10,000. So that's the 9.7 you have set aside in reserves. And the deferred revenue, the largest item, is the federal gas tax funds. You started with 250. I think you were going to do that on Long Creek Road or some road, and that wasn't done maybe this year. So that money's been set aside, and then you had 357,000 to use this year. And the very, very last page is just the segmented information, and at the very far side it says totals. Just a curiosity, you received $3 million in government transfers. That's about a quarter of your budget, so you are dependent on that. When you look at your operating expenses, about half of your money is spent in wages, and that's to know too. Does anyone have any questions on the financial statements or the audit?
Guess it sounds like you answered the questions. Either that or Donna has.
Donna knows everything, she tells me. But no, I think in closing, you do have extra funding or money, and that's some of the projects you didn't do, and also you had some surpluses in your various departments. You took a look at that and you set that money aside.
Well, I guess if there's no questions, that I think you must be communicating to us very well, so that, thank you, Paul.
No, thank you.
Okay. 6.1. Okay. Okay, 6.2.1, the gov deals for surplus equipment. That there is a suggested motion that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the use of gov deals online auction service for the disposal of surplus municipal vehicles and equipment. Are you moving, Bill?
I'll move.
Councilor Knott, Deputy Reeve Campbell, second. Question, Councilor Syed?
I just have a question with regards to the sentence where it says the winning bidder pays a 5% premium. Do they pay that to us or do they pay that to
The auction,
gov deals?
to the auction.
So in effect, they get 12.5%. Okay, any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Moving to 6.3.1, North Huron Museum, and that possible resolution is that the Council of the Township of North Huron accepts the report from the Director of Recreation and Facilities on the Museum Bell project for information purposes. And further that the Friends of the Museum Bell project is hereby approved. How does council feel on that?
I'll move for discussion purposes.
Okay. Ritz-Matulinga seconds. Discussion? Go ahead.
I think there are a lot of things to consider here. The Friends of the Museum is at a juncture of uncertainty at the moment. And I think it's quite likely that they will fold as a group this fall. The chair of the Friends has resigned, needed to take a break from the long years that he's put in at the job. And no one seems to be interested in taking over that position. I think there are a great many things that we need to consider as a council concerning the purpose of the museum and how it should operate. At the moment, and in the past few years, there's been virtually nothing set aside in budget in terms of programming. So the Friends of the Museum really had to raise their own money for doing most of the work that they decided to do, and they did some really remarkable jobs and took on some great projects. However, council, and I'm not blaming, I'm part of the council that has been negligent, I think, in terms of clarifying what the purposes and the goals and the operations of the museum would take. And I think that needs to change. If we don't do something, then we're going to have across the street an old vacant building with no purpose, but it has to be maintained, cleaned, and heated, and so on. At the moment, there is no plan for offering any museum-type program. So I think there are many, many things that we need to consider here. As far as the Bell project is concerned, I think it's a viable project. It's an interesting addition to the property, and I don't think there's anything wrong with going ahead and completing that project, whether the Friends continue or not. But I think to postpone it for the distant future would be missing an opportunity to recognize the hard work that that group has done and the money that they have raised actually to create this installation. So I would recommend that we go ahead. But if we decide to defer it and wait for council to make some decisions as to what the future of that facility is going to be, then I think we need to follow through and actually prepare some kind of terms of reference and strategic plan for that facility. So there's a few thoughts. I think it's a big issue, and I think the important thing here is for our staff to come up with some ideas for us to consider, and we need to take a really serious look at it, because it's a project that has great potential for the community, but as it is now, we're not capitalizing on that opportunity. Thanks.
Councillor Slade.
So a few months ago, I voiced the same concern about the Friends of the Museum project and the museum as a whole. But we also have to be mindful of the priority list that we've set aside for the staff. And at this point, with the amount of work that has been dedicated to shared services and other large projects, I'm not disagreeing the fact that we need to make a decision on this, but we need to wait for a report on what that looks like. Is it that building? Is it the way it looks today? Is there different ideas? What it becomes a more in-depth conversation than just programs and what the facility is today. It's a bigger thing, and we need. I'm not willing to accept other than hard decisions of status quo or not. We need to be mindful of, yes, the groups put in a lot of work, but there's a lot of volunteers that put a lot of work in this municipality that, we have to make sure that their priorities are met too. And we all have priorities, financial, or so what. So, I think I'm still waiting for that report to come. I know we've had some reports, some studies done about the whole Alice Munro Festival museum conversation. I'm still waiting from a report from our staff, but I'm not suggesting I'm pushing for the staff to make that a higher priority. I think we've put it on the priority list. I wonder if there's maybe from Sharon, is there an idea of when that report might come?
I think when Pat and I were discussing this report, like right now we have so many things on our slate. We're really struggling to balance the project workload that we have right now. I know Pat's department has quite a few capital priorities that they're going to be working on over this summer, and shared services is quite an animal, let's just say. It's taking a significant amount of time. So I definitely agree with you that I would like to see some solid direction from council on the level of service that you wish to provide with museum programming. I can't see us getting to that report in this year, just with the other projects that we have on the slate. But I do think that some of the things that I've identified in this report here is there is overlap in museum oversight that does create some confusion with our volunteers in the community. It creates some confusion among our staff over who's responsible for museum programming versus museum facility versus the FDev officer who's located there on a daily basis and liaises with the public and different community groups. And I would expect that I would be addressing that piece this year in the report that I'm drafting for you on the review of the Economic Development Department and how some of these arts and culture initiatives will funnel into the future of that department. So I would expect to address the framework piece of it, but as Pat indicated in her section of the report, there's a whole lot that you need to consider with respect to the future of that facility, because there are going to be some significant capital upgrades required there. So we need to address the asset management piece and really put together a business plan and get some sort of direction from council as to the level of service you wish to provide. But I think you're going to need to understand what the numbers are before you can make some of those decisions. So I wouldn't anticipate before next year that we could be delving into that. Just need to knock some of the other things off of our list first.
Councillor Watt.
I agree with Trevor and what Sharon has shared with us. I agree fully. It seems to me that the Bell project itself could go forward. The Friends have the plan, they've got the drawing, they've got everything is ready. They have funds available for their part of the installation, and Pat has indicated that the $300 is available for the cement work that would be required. I don't see that we need to hold that up for lack of a long-term strategic plan. So my suggestion is that we go ahead with the Bell project, with that installation, and look forward to getting a comprehensive plan from staff.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Motion's defeated.
So then to clarify the direction, we have provided an alternate motion within the report if council chose not to support the report within the recommendations section, so that we have clear direction to staff. I would draw that to the attention. Does anyone wish to move that?
I will.
Councillor Knott and Councillor Sight.
I oppose that motion. I think it's chicken.
All those in favor? Carried. Moving to 6.4.1, the chip speed signing program. And suggested resolution that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby authorize the clerk to sign a memorandum of understanding with Coalition for Cure Injury Prevention and provide the necessary insurance information. Moving Councillor Knott and Councillor Sight with seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. 6.4.2, the Jackson Drain Branch. And suggested motion is that the council of the Township of North Huron accept the petition for improvement to the Jackson Municipal Drain Branch C at Concession 3, Lot 37, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron, under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. And further that the engineering firm of Dietrich Engineering be appointed to prepare a report. Councillor Hallahan moving, Deputy Reeve Campbell seconding. Any discussion?
Just one. Maybe to Kelly, there's only one name on this petition.
That's all that there needs to be on
That's
that.
all that there needs to be, and they're going to go down through his property to give him a proper outlet for this.
Yeah, Wayne Cantlin bought the property above that drain that
Yes.
goes through the bush. And when we first met on site, what they wanted to do was just replace the pipe that was blocked with roots. That won't alleviate the problem, so we've had more discussions and another site meeting, and this is what's coming of it. So section 78 says that if there's going to be anything that's done to the existing drain, then you have to go through this part of it. So that's what we're bringing to council.
Thanks, Kelly.
Just one more question, Kelly. Is there any objection from the person that's in the middle?
We haven't had any real discussions about that, so we'll see when it comes. He'll have his turn to either accept or reject it, so.
All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to 7.1. Moving to 7.1, the request from William Hittman. And that's that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby supports the William Hittman asphalt team in making application to the LCBO for a special occasion permit to hold a beer garden at Riverside Park and Libro Field in conjunction with the slow pitch tournament on July 15th, 16th, and 17th, 2016. And further, that the council proclaims the event of municipal significance, and further that the council authorizes an exemption to the noise control bylaw 2009, extending the noise bylaw from 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. on July 15th and 16th, 2016. Do I have a mover? Councillor Knott, Councillor Ritzma-Tenenga. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried.
1 a.m. 1 a.m.
Yeah.
It says a.m. in the National 30th had shut it down at 1 p.m.
It's AM on the copy I have.
I think the letter it says PM.
You said 1 p.m.
Oh.
Sorry. That was my misreading then. Okay. Moving to 8.1, the Reeves activity report. That we had a successful golf tournament and golf ball drop for healthcare recruitment on June 11th. The size of it was down a little bit, but there's a lot of other things on the go and many other, I'll say, charities that, and things that are special to people that are also fundraising. Last Wednesday, I almost made the North Huron Family Health Team annual general meeting. Got there in time to pick up the information if anybody wants to borrow it. The county committee of the whole day 2 ran a little longer than I was expecting, so that I only caught the end of it. Friday evening, the opening of the live theater and the gala, the play Our Beautiful Sons, a very, I'll say, enjoyable evening. It is a play that shows the true side of what happens inside a family. Very well acted. On Saturday, I attended Summerfest in Belgrave. Basically, the afternoon section of it went well. The bouncy castle and face painting and things for the kids was well attended. Some other parts, we could have used an extra 100 people for the pork chop dinner, and I think people were just too tired for the family dance, which basically the music stopped at 9:30 from lack of people to dance. But a well put together day and everything. On Sunday, CKNX 90th anniversary celebration barbecue. We got to meet a few of the firemen at the barbecue, and the George Fox concert was very well attended. I'm not sure what the count was. I know one of the draw tickets was $9.99, so that it was well attended and enjoyed. Another thing about the CKNX 90th anniversary that I didn't see it in any of the printed advertisements, but at noon on Friday on the radio they advertised the tours of the station. And I understood there was approximately 60 people took them up on that. And my daughter had 2 junior farmer exchange girls with her, and all 3 of them loved the hour-long tour of the station, which was really good. The girls from Tasmania and Germany said there was no way that they could ever get that kind of a tour in their own country of a radio station. So I thought that was a pretty nice compliment to the community. Okay. Is there anything from council members on things that they've attended? Councillor Syed?
I have a couple of things. One, I did want to mention to council about, there was a notice of motion that was taken off the agenda with regards to the parking on between Francis Street and Carlin Terrace on John. And the reason why that was removed is currently we already have a bylaw that makes that a no parking zone on both sides of the street. And in essence, it was just signed appropriately. So the signs have went up. There was some conversation with the hospital today about the concern for those signs, because they had some questions and some concerns. And I said to them, it is a bylaw. The bylaw has been there for many years. It just maybe hasn't been enforced. So the conversation that I bring to council here is we maybe need to be providing some communication to the public about that, the enhancement of that bylaw, to ensure that coincides with the finishing of that parking lot at the new medical clinic. I don't hope to start pounding on people who are parking there, but I do think that we need to set a trend that parking lot is going to be finished, and once that parking lot is finished, and even today when it's not, there is parking available that they can park there. So I do want to tell the council here that I'm going to bring this kind of conversation up at the Police Services Board meeting tomorrow, to get some direction from the Police Services Board, as well as have some discussion with the chief about his kind of thoughts on that communication and see where we go from here. But I did want to bring that up because I did bring it up a couple of weeks ago as a notice of motion, and it was taken off because of that reason. That the bylaw already exists, it just maybe hasn't been enforced. The second thing is I did attend the meeting of the Building Bridges Committee, and I did want to bring back to the committee that they are $30,000 short in order to begin construction of the sports track and lower field redevelopment. So the total project to date is $710,000. They have raised with the Avon Maitland School Board's money of the $90,000 that was put in for the accessibility path between the parking lot and the lower fields to be $345,000, so almost $346,000. So they're 50% of the way there. They did give me a final total on the gala. That was about $62,500. So that was an excellent night. We've talked about that before. But so I guess my push to council as well as members of council and the community to I know we've asked for a lot and they've asked for a lot, but the conversation is that the more they can get this by the end of July, if they can get finished this 30,000, then construction will begin on that in the fall. So the track portion of the project. So I do let council know, because that is it was part of the budget that was taken out, but I still think it is a valiant effort from this community as well as the group that we support. So I would hope everybody can kind of dig a little and get them through that the last little bit. So for this particular point, because obviously after August, it's not construction can't happen or a lot through the winter time. So that's the push to that group right now. They did have a discussion with a Derek Ether, a regional advisor for tourism and cultural and sport with regards to grant writing. So they have had some conversations about what grants are coming out and some support from the ministry as to how to properly align themselves in the way of writing a grant. They did ask for a conversation about getting some support from the municipality. The part that I expressed to them is that with regards to the playground, it's very difficult for the municipality to support the construction of a project that isn't on municipal land. So in theory, as a group, as a support, I think by me being on that group is a support in itself. But I've said to the committee, if there's things that you would like this council to suggest or to look at, feel free to send them in to the clerk and we can look at them. But from a standpoint of grant writing and stuff like that, we just need to be careful of where it's not on municipal land. So we just want to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes and that kind of stuff. So if there's any questions with regards to those type 2 things, I would be more than happy to answer them if there is any.
Okay. Well, I missed one important part. This is the plaque for 2016. We'll have to adjust some to get it in on that wall with the other ones, but it's nice to have a North Huron artist, Greg Sherwood. This is his picture that he has agreed for the festival to use, and basically without royalties back to him. So I think that's a nice gift on his part. So any other things from council? Okay. The bylaws next. 10.1, bylaw number 62, 2016. And the resolution might be that bylaw number 62, 2016, being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council a rental agreement between the corporation of the Township of North Huron and Rico Canada Inc. for one Rico MPC 3003 copier and 2 Rico MP 5054 copiers be introduced and read a first and second time. Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Sype. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And that bylaw 62, 2016, being a bylaw to authorize the Region Clerk to sign on behalf of council a rental agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and Rico Canada Inc. for 1 Rico MP C 3003 copier and 2 Rico MP 5054 copiers be read a third and final time, signed by the Region Clerk and engrossed in the bylaw book. Councillor Wyden, Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. Is there any announcements? Any other business, Sharon?
Yeah, oh, sorry, the food, Huron Food.
12.1, the Huron Food Action Network. And I will make the comment that it is giving the people of Huron all things from all directions, many of them that we have no control over. And it's, the way it's written is so utopia that I have a problem supporting something that I know cannot happen. Is there council discussion? Councillor Knott?
I will agree with you 100%, Rafe, that it is very utopian and it touches on many areas that are way out of the control of this lower tier municipality as well as the county itself. And that, quite frankly, there are portions of it after I read through it the second time in the report that I will just say I believe they're not quite correct. So I myself am with you. I cannot support it. It's never going to happen. It's unachievable, and it's bordering on actually interfering with the operation of the agricultural industry in some ways. So.
Councillor Wyden?
We raised a question during the following the presentation about what could the role of council be, and the gentleman didn't really have an answer to that question. And I think some feedback that would be relevant to this group would be, could you specify what the role of a municipality is? They need to go through that process of attaching it to lower tier governance.
Councillor Sype?
Yeah, and again, the food charter as it reads doesn't tell you a lot of about how it's gonna, like how things are gonna be accomplished. Again, with like you and Councillor Knott, and even Councillor Vauden's comment about how us as lower tier can help. I would like some direction from Huron County as other than just the reading of the food charter. How do they assume that we are going to impact on this charter, and some direction about what impact we can establish to this? But I look at it as, give me some clear guidelines as to what the measurables are to show what success is. And if they can provide some of that, then maybe I might be able to support it. But at this point, I can't support it without knowing what the measurables are to whether it's going to be a success or not.
Councillor Wyden?
We've had some presentations in the past that indicated some very, very serious problems in terms of families providing satisfactory diet for their families, and meeting all of the costs of living for people on welfare or people who have low incomes. And I think those are serious issues, and we need to be concerned about them. But as you are saying, what do we do about it? We don't control the welfare system. We don't control the economy. We need to look after our people, but at the same time, we have to be realistic in terms of what we're capable of doing and what we have access to.
Councillor Ritzman tonight.
I think that in principle, this is a good idea, and I think that they're just asking for us to support whatever ideas and suggestions that they come up with. I mean, obviously, it's going to take partnership with a number of different organizations within the county to make this feasible, and perhaps it is a little utopian in its ideas and natures, but that doesn't mean that we can't support the initiative that this is to help get better local foods on the tables of our low-income families, or, you know, getting more awareness out there of needing, of working together for nutrition programs and such. I don't think that it's a huge issue to support this and to lend our support behind this program. I think they have some good ideas, and maybe as they sort of flush things through and figure out the ins and outs of it and come up with a clear plan, it'll be more clear to the rest of us. But I don't know, I think it's a good idea in principle.
Not to enter into the discussion too heavily, but the World Trade Order, which Canada has signed on, basically is one of the biggest impediments to following this up. That we have international deals that where the lowest priced commodity and whoever can produce it for the cheapest is the market, and that it doesn't matter whether it's local, because the World Trade Order goes against having local stuff, because the World Trade Order demands that whoever can do it the cheapest gets to do it. Councillor Syfe?
Yeah, no, and again, in essence, I don't disagree with what Councillor Ritzman says. I guess my position is that we get a lot of these charters and things on our desk to say, do you want to support them? Over the last year and a half to 2 years as a councillor, I don't remember a lot of them coming back to tell me what the measurable was, or what the success measurable was. Like, so the conversation is, I can support it out the wazoo, but if it's not measurable or know whether success has been determined, I guess the question is, are we part of the failure because we don't really know what the achievables are? So, you know, some of the part for me, it's not that I don't want to support them and don't think it's a great initiative. I think it is. But we need to get some hard facts and hard measurables in order to establish whether we're part of the game or we're just the innocent bystander that's watching things walk by the table and we really don't have an impact. So that's for me where I voice my biggest concern, not necessarily with the charter itself, but how are they going to measure it? How are we going to know there's success there?
Councillor Vaughn?
Well, I think we've come up with two alternatives. One is to just ignore it and not adopt it. Another one is to take it at its face value and approve it. Maybe there's a third option, and that is trying to get a dialogue going with this group in terms of saying, well, what are you talking about? What can we do? We look at this seriously. We're concerned about the food. We're concerned about the welfare of our people. Let's work out a plan to do something. And there are all kinds of factors like the international trade issues, but that's part of the reality that we're facing and we still have people with problems. So my suggestion is that we answer this group and say, you've got to tell us more.
Sharon?
So this document itself is, it is more of like a broad policy statement. So it's talking about the framework that's in place, but there really are no actionable items within this document. We have identified agriculture as one of our top employment sectors in North Huron when we did our economic development strategic plan. And so we do have to drill down and sort of look at what strategies we're going to use to support agriculture. So I think if you look at this document in terms of the fact that it's sort of a broad policy statement, it is the Shangri-La of, you know, what we think of as local food initiatives in our community. But what can we do, as you're saying, to take it to that next level and develop those actionable items? So you could choose to support this if you do agree with sort of that broad concept that they've put forward. But if you are wanting to see something that's going to mean something to your community and actually be actionable, you could also initiate that discussion and figure out how we can incorporate some of that into our strategic planning going forward.
If I may, at county council, that the feeling of county council is that we help the food banks, to help those that are basically, they're paying the rent with the cash they get. And there's initiatives into trying to come up with the living wage, which I think was calculated at, what, 16 and a quarter or so, for more jobs. And that's the way the county council is looking at it. We're trying to identify spots where we can help, where the need is the greatest. Councillor Knott?
It's interesting. You go back to the utopian thing. I fully believe that we should support and do everything we can to support local farmers markets. There is a small niche group of people who grow organic products in a small way and who have small family farms and want to live that lifestyle. And I believe we should support them. For those of you who might not be aware of what I actually do, I'm a business development manager for one of the largest agricultural employers in this county. And we farm almost 3,000 acres of field crops. And we have a 22-acre greenhouse facility in Huron County. We cannot get local employees as it is now. Pushing wages up is not the answer to it. It's actually educating people about the opportunities within the agricultural business because they choose to go and work at McDonald's and so on. We actually have to employ several hundred seasonal workers from offshore every year because we cannot fill all of the job requirements during our season. Messing around with this type of thing is very, very focused, and that's fine, except it misses all of the broad issues. Within our industry, 70% of everything that we produce, we ship to the United States. We actually export as far as Puerto Rico and would grow under contract for Puerto Rico. But, 70% of our business is outside of this country and will continue to be more. It continues to grow every day. So all of this emphasis and spending time and money and discussion about local this and local that is not going to solve our problem. It is far broader than that. And it goes back to some of the trade agreements and issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. That's where we should be talking about it. So although I do believe all these local farmers markets, yeah, we should support them and so on, but this document goes way beyond that and starts to talk about things like wages and so on. We're way out of our purview as a municipal council. At this point in time, there's nothing that this municipal council of Huron County I can see, unless you want to waive taxes on all our farmland, you can do to help us. We have to help ourselves, and we are working. This document, that's nice, but that's all it is.
Councillor Ritzman, Anita?
Really, all that they're asking for is for us to commit to work in partnership towards a healthy food system based on the principles that they've outlined. And I don't think that it's that out there to at least show our support behind it, and perhaps they're a little off the mark, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're onto something, and through some good processing and better research, they'll be able to come up with some really fantastic sustainable ideas for the county.
Councillor Knott?
Just so you're aware, we give a lot to the Huron County Food Bank and the London Food Bank and several others, including all the way down to Leamington. We give a lot of product every year. And I'm talking trailer loads of product, and we provide the low air and the fresh produce to give them as much as they can handle. So we support the local food banks and trying to make sure that there is a healthy situation locally, but it doesn't generate us money, and this thing here is not going to do anything.
As do many of the commodity organizations as
Many
well.
groups.
Councillor Syke?
I guess my question is, from your position on county council, Reed, has the county established whether this is a report where it actually can be attainable, or is it a report where it's a functional that really 90 or 70% of it we can't do, and they've got to funnel more of this discussion to the province about trade organization, trade stuff? Like, is it an initiative that the county really can support, but it wants to support, but really has no impact on? I guess that's the struggle that I'm having. I hear all the discussions, and I'm really a proponent of this whole federal and provincial government trade organization stuff, because they make those policies every day that affect a lot of people, and maybe they're not always aware of all the sectors that are affecting. I guess my question is from a county perspective, do they believe that this is sustainable within the county, or are they kind of reading what somebody's telling them, and it's great, and let's move on? And I don't want you to speak for all council, but I guess I don't know what the discussion has been at county. So the problem is that the county document, I'm not really sure where I sit on this, because it's, other than I don't know the measurables, it seems like more of a county document.
I'll say it came out of the planning department trying to address a number of things. What this document doesn't address is that Huron County produces over 200 commodities for commercial purposes. We have immense food production that approximately a third of my acres in the last 10 years is growing food to go to Europe and Asia, not the Canadian market at all, because that helps the country's balance of trade when we have things. When you look at it, it is a report. It reports a lot of things that would be really nice if we could attain them. But as you have said, Trevor, I don't see benchmarks in it, and that the majority of county councillors want to see something that we can identify where we've improved the situation. Councillor Vaughan?
I think it's sort of typical of the county council to look at the easy things to deal with. The food banks, for example, those are Band-Aid, so they're no solution to anything on a very temporary basis. I think this is an opportunity in a very broad sense, as Yolanda has mentioned, to look at the whole issue on a broader basis And sure, there are no action items necessarily here, but it sounds to me that it could be a useful framework for us to attach to and try to help them to particularize what action we can take to realize some of these visions that are here. So I wouldn't write it off.
Councillor Syed?
But unless they've got federal, provincial, municipal, and county at the table, it isn't gonna matter. It isn't gonna matter the discussion that you have, because they're not gonna be achievable goals. Because the impact of those goals goes all the way up the food chain to the federal government and the provincial government. So unless they're gonna come with some understanding of why they've made their policy statements the way they have, and that they have some thought on potentially changing them on what the social impact of those are, that's one of the part of this document. It talks about carefully balancing economic and social benefits. Well, that's great in Huron County, but the province and the federal government are looking at the whole broader spectrum. They're looking at the province, but they're also looking at the country. So until we have all those in playing on the same page, it's again a conversation about a Band-Aid solution, because we can't really impact the broader spectrum of what the needs are for Huron County.
Deputy Reeve.
I was sitting in Goderich the other night having some fish down there by the harbor, and there was a boat, probably the biggest boat I've ever seen in the harbor in Goderich, loading up beans. And they weren't going to Canada. They had a big federal sign on the side of it, and it was going to Korea. Okay? They control our price. I'm a farmer. They control our price, what we're going to get, whether we can live on it or not. I had a person approach me from the food bank last year, knowing that I had a small orchard. And he said to me, could you donate me apples every week that the food bank's open? I said, yes, I'll donate you apples. So he came down every week, picked up 10 bushels of apples, and he said they were one of the first things that was gone. Because a lot of the people that come to the food bank, there's certain things they have to have. And I was glad to be a part of that. But I'm not so sure I'm a part of this, because it's just, I think we're getting squeezed out here in the county, because the prices are dictated from above, and we can't probably, at some point, we're not going to be able to live at those prices that they're giving us for our products.
Councillor
Do local
Doyle.
farmers not have the ability to market locally?
No.
To support this?
No,
There's not enough market for the volumes that we have to produce at the prices that I'll say in 44 years, basically, I probably have to produce 5 times what I did 40 years ago to have the same net bottom line.
just one other thing that came out in the paper this week, that the price of beef has gone down 40% in 2015. There's going to be a lot of beef farmers who are not going to be able to produce beef at 40% less price than when they sell the beef. Sorry, Ray, you're a beef farmer. But I don't know if you heard that, but that's just, that's where it's at. Yeah. Sorry to give you the news for your soldiers. I can show you the papers Friday.
So,
Okay.
so we're helpless. Helpless and hopeless.
Do you give us direction as to what to do with the charter? You're either going to, from what I'm hearing, you have the option to adopt it, or you can kick back for further information, or you can just notify it.
Councillor Syed.
I would honestly, because I think it is valuable, but it's valuable only to the point where if you're gonna get get all of the groups to have a hard discussion about what this document really means to the county, to the province, to the country. So I'm gonna push it back to the Huron County. That's my motion be to push it back to Huron County with a strong emphasis on benchmarking and measurables and some possible in discussions with the province and the federal government if need be.
You're seconding, right?
Yep.
Councillor Gallagher, second.
I think that's a very good process. I think that's the way we should go.
Have we discussed it enough? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Okay, 13 is the closed session and points that we would be going in camera for as a meeting of council or local board or of a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. The meeting is held for the purposes of educating or training the members. And 2, at the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of council, local board, or committee. And that's dealing with procedural bylaw training. And the other point is personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that deals with the shared service employment matters. And Councillor Wadden seconds. All in favor? Okay, we will have a short recess.